Hi, I'm Dr. Mike, and this is NFGeeks. Well, today is Thursday, at least when this is being recorded, it's Thursday. And on the NFGeeks discussion forum on Facebook, it's Theme Thursday, where I make a video based on a theme and encourage other people to also make a video based on this theme. And, you know, if you're not on the forum, you can make a video too and set it up as a response. I'll let it through, you know. So you don't have to be on the forum just to participate in this, you know, this theme. So today's theme is going to be books. Okay, I want to talk about books and basically people's attitude about books and reaction to books and thoughts about books and how it all relates, because I think your temperament and your type have a lot to do with what books you like or don't like, and what your attitude is towards books, you know, whatever it may be. So I think that matters, you know, and I want to, you know, let people know that you can make a video based on whatever your attitude towards books is, even if you hate them. You know, these don't have to be book reports where people sound pretentious and say things like, you know, in Ulysses by James Joyce, Molly's perspective is unique in that. Yeah, who cares? You know, you could talk about your book, but it doesn't have to be this sort of intellectual highbrow thing about books. If you hate books or you only like specific types of books, even if it's just graphic novels, then talk about that. I want people to talk about their attitude and their connection to books, even if it's something they hate. So. All right, because it won't all be about just how awesome books are. So, for example, I'll start. So the way I approach books is very ENFP, I think. So I have a lot of books in the apartment. This is a small amount compared to what's actually going on. You should see what's on the other side of this corner and goes around and all that. Noah calls me a book hoarder. You know, like those people who hoard and they have like stacks of papers and garbage, whatever. He says I'm like that, but with books. And there are a lot of books. Now, I do love books because I love knowledge, and I love having an array of knowledge. I have many, many different sections of knowledge. It definitely reflects my pluralistic and transdisciplinary attitude towards ideas and, you know, academia. So I have lots of books from all sorts of different sections of academia. But I'm not a lover of reading. Believe it or not. I love books, but I love books because they contain knowledge, and there's lots of different perspectives of knowledge, but I'm not a lover of reading. I like reading, and I do read, but I'm not a lover of reading, you know. So, and that's particularly true since my dissertation ended. I have, you know, for the past 2 years, I was reading everything all the time, and, you know, you read, you know, it's nothing but reading before you type, and, so I did an excessive amount of reading over the past 2 years, but since the dissertation, it's dropped off. I'm sort of taking a break, but that doesn't mean I don't read. I do. You know, I'm just reading less than I did like a year ago. You know, that's all. But I read, but you know, when I'm not reading for academia, I read very much like an ENFP, and what I mean by that is I read sporadically and non-linearly. I don't read cover to cover. Okay, I don't read. I open up to a page, sometimes at random. I just start reading, and then I look at that, and then I close the book, and then another time I'm opening up another section of the book, and I'm reading it. You know, I read like that. So, for example, people often ask me, you know, have I read all the books in my apartment? Now, the truth is, yeah, pretty much almost all of them. Easily 2/3 of them at any given place if you point. Sometimes a lot more, sometimes all of the books on a shelf, and sometimes about, you know, a half or 2/3, it depends. But I can definitely say I've read about 2/3 of them from cover to cover. I've read, maybe more than that. But the rest, I sort of have read in parts for various reasons. Okay, so for example, behind me, this is the history section of the of the library. It's not here because it relates to personality type or anything like that. I'm in my kitchen. Yes, I have a bookshelf in my kitchen. But I'm in my kitchen, and it's just easier for me to sit in this chair and have the computer, my laptop on the table, and it's just easy, and it looks nice in the background, right? But this is really the history section. Now, up above, you can't see, is the ancient history part, and I love ancient history. So these books are books that some of them I've read it completely, and some I've read partially, but these are the books I use to write lectures all the time for things that I teach on. Sometimes I've taught ancient history, I've taught Old and New Testament, philosophy have to do with ancient history and stuff. So what I do is I take the books, I'll take like 4 or 5 of them. So let's say I'm going to write something, I got to do a lecture on the Roman Empire. I'll take like 4 or 5 of my books about the Roman Empire and ancient history and write a lecture based on those 5, and then see what cross-references, see what doesn't, what's something I want to put just from this book. I use all the books together to form this one lecture. So that takes a lot of reading of different sections. So I've probably read, like the books on the Roman Empire, I probably have read them all, but I haven't read them at once. You know what I mean? Like I've read them, like the first part for this other lecture, then I had to write this other part of this other paper once, so I got to here, and then, I read it like that. So they're sort of all read, but not read linearly at all. Another example, this is in my bathroom. In my bathroom, I have a little mini library in there. Anybody who's been on NFGeeks who's been here knows I have a mini library. And a lot of times I put books that don't require cover-to-cover reading for the very reasons. You can just flip through it, whenever, I'm in there and just looking around. I can just look at it, go to a page, and start reading. So, for example, 2 things I always have in there. One is, and if you don't own this, or own things by this person, you're not a good NF. And that is, I have Rumi, the poet, Rumi, in there. Rumi was in my dissertation, by the way. He made an appearance. I called him an NF theorist, Don't worry, I'm going to talk about my dissertation someday. But Rumi's in there because it's poems, and you can just flip to wherever you want to read. You just go, flip it up, and read about Shams, or read about the Ruby, or read about whatever. It's right in there. It's mystical poems by a Sufi, by the way, for those of you not familiar with Rumi. Another book I often have in there is the Lun Yu, which is Confucius's Analects, which is Confucius's sayings. Because, these things, there's no narrative to Confucius's sayings. It's just a list of things he said. The master said, and then it gives that quote that he said. And you can just open it, again, to any point. You just open it up and start reading. And there you go. You can just use it like that, and then close it, and then come back. I like that. That's why I like textbooks. Also, sometimes I have textbooks in there. I have a textbook about world religions right now, so that because you could just go to the chapter you want to read about, and then you just go in there and read. You don't have to go from beginning to end and go forward. So I read very non-linear like that. So now a set of books that I want to talk about because they matter to me are these colored books, these rainbow colored books. These are the series of by Will Durant and his wife, Ariel Durant, about history. Okay, these were written a while ago, probably about 60, 70 years ago. Not these editions, but it's an older version of history. I got one more about the Orient that he wrote that goes with this set. It's up there with the ancient history. But those books are meaningful to me for a couple of reasons. One is I actually used them in my dissertation. I needed to put some history stuff, and I went through all these books one after the other and looked up some history and put some in there. So it was really great to use those books in that way. Having this encyclopedic thing of history. I also, I got them in this great sort of moment. I found them in a box at a book sale, like a used book sale, and all of it. It's this complete set, this Will Durant thing. It's this whole set, and it was for like $5. And I was the only one who knew what this was. Like, this is the Will Durant collection. Oh my God, $5. And so, I scooped it up. I couldn't wait to have it. So it was a great moment to sort of get them. And the last thing I like about these books, and I've read these I've read. The one about ancient history, I've read like 3 times already. I love that one. Fascinating stuff in that one. Is that these books were written by Will Durant, who was a history intellectual, and his wife, Ariel. And they had this very long love affair for decades. They actually died on the same day when he was like 90 and she was like 80. And she didn't get any original credit at first because, heaven forbid, a woman, was involved writing a history book. But she was definitely involved in helping him and writing it. And I think, she actually typed it. Like, she didn't just, serve him tea. Like, she was in the room doing the research, putting it together, typing it, literally getting it together. And that's one of the reasons I was fascinated by Will Durant, because I wanted that life, to have somebody, and her and I would write history books or something, until into our 90s or something. So I sort of, Will Durant's life was one of the fantasies that I had. Now, I'm not going to be Will Durant, obviously, but that always touched me about these books and how they came into being. That always mattered to me. So that's my basic view of books, is that sort of non-linear reading. That's how I read books usually. That's a very ENFP way of reading. I want to talk about two books that are very meaningful to me as an NF. I want to get to that part of this. And there's two, and they're very, very NF, and they made a huge impact on me in my life, and definitely expanded my consciousness very much. And I think it matters because I always push forward about education and knowledge, like in the Scholarchy and stuff like that. Education matters. It absolutely matters. It expands your consciousness in ways that normally it wouldn't happen. Not because of what you read, but what you're forced to read, you know what I mean, in terms of things that you hate and then getting things that you like or that you connect with. The whole experience makes a difference. And the book that really, really sort of made me jump, several steps into my intellectual self was this book, and it's called Naturalistic Inquiry, by Lincoln and Guba. And what this book is the Bible of qualitative research. It is the single most important book in qualitative research. You're going to do qualitative research in the social sciences, you need to start with this book. You're not starting with this book, you're not starting in the right place. This is it. And so what this book is it's, first of all, it's a description of the philosophical assumptions you need to do qualitative research as opposed to quantitative research, which is what regular science and the social sciences use, statistical inference. This is using qualitative research has to do with, in the social science, having a dialogue with somebody and recording the dialogue and then looking for themes and interacting with the person directly to create the ideas. It's something totally different than quantitative research. Now, so first of all, the research it's talking about is very NF research. You're having a dialogue, you're talking, you have an interaction. It's very ENFP. You could argue that all the videos here at NFGeeks are qualitative research in a way, because it's all about talking and interviewing and finding common themes and things like that. It's that type of research. And so the research itself is very NF. But not only that, what really blew my mind was the first third of the book is more or less a critique of logical positivism, which is the philosophical, the collection of the philosophical assumptions of science and quantitative research, that exists in academia and all the major sciences and social sciences. And it goes through this critique of that, of its limitations and its assumptions and things like that. And is the Cartesian paradigm right and all that? And it blew my mind, because I was already sort of there, because it wasn't crystallized yet, but I was taking all these quantitative research classes, serious ones, hardcore ones, which is one of the reasons why I am very critical of other theories, and I'm going to use that term loosely, floating around the internet, because people aren't using actual research. They're not creating actual statistical research models. So no, it's not science. It's not. I don't care how times you personally have observed it. When they say observation in science, they're talking about quantitative measurement, changes in the measurement, statistical changes in the measurement. That's what they're talking about, And this book sort of questions all that and what's behind that, and does it work and does it not work, and where it's not saying it doesn't work, but where it works and where it doesn't, And I had been studying all these quantitative models, and as an ENFP, you can imagine how much fun that was. And then I read this, and my mind went, it really, really pushed me into a more transdisciplinary, more into the humanities, into a more holistic view of the self, of people. And it certainly helped with my understanding even of typology, and how it is. And even my dissertation is based on that sort of qualitative dialectic, discussion. So this really, really made a huge difference in me, and it allowed my consciousness to expand in this huge way. And I really felt this was my first gigantic intellectual leap that I ever had in my life because of this. So this is an important book to me. It's very important. All right. So it's kind of NF. I think NTs would like this too, at least theoretically. I don't know if NTs could do qualitative research in terms of discussing things with people, whatever. I don't know, having that dialogue, but intellectually they would get what they're saying here. So I think NTs would like that. Now the other book this is an NF must-have. Just like Rumi is an NF must-have, this book is an NF must-have, and it is Don Quixote, okay, by Miguel de Cervantes. This is a must-have. This is my favorite book in literature, in all of literature. I mean, I like Shakespeare. I do. I love it. You know this. I can talk about Shakespeare all day long. But what single work that I love the most, in literature, it's Don Quixote. And that's because it is about an NF, okay? And in fact, it is so clearly about an NF, I have to say that it is written by an NF, okay? Cervantes must be an NF to concoct this thing, okay? And there's so much NF things going on. Like, it's a history book of a history book of a history book. Like, there's a Miguel Cervantes in the book who's narrating the story. There's all sorts of awesome things in it. But the basic story, the simplest version of this, is that Don Quixote is a, just sort of a middle-aged landowner, alone, bored with life, kind of like me. Hopefully I don't go this route. But he's into like fantasy books. This is taking place early 1600s, but he's into like stories about King Arthur and quests and all that. And he just sort of decides, slowly, but he decides that he's going to live that life. Instead of living this boring life, this middle-aged guy, he's going to dress up and be a knight and talk as if he's a knight and go on quests like he's a knight. Okay. Now, he doesn't get real armor, you know what I mean? He gets onto this really crappy horse and he puts a basin on his head, I mean, he looks nuts. But, he sees himself totally as a knight and goes out and has these adventures, and everyone's laughing at him. But it's really about idealism and subjective points of view, because, the way he's acting is he's creating his own reality, and what he's creating is an idealism. At one point, everyone laughs at him because he's at the inn, and these two whores are in the inn, and he treats them like, ladies of nobility, and he bows to them and he yields to them, and everyone's laughing at them because they're whores. But I don't know, what's so bad about that? What's so bad about treating women, as ideal things? And even if they're whores, what difference does that make? They're still women, there's a deep point in there. And it's very, very comical. The biggest NF thing is Dulcinea. He has this idealized woman he calls Dulcinea, which is sort of the woman he worships and does all he thinks on her behalf for her sake. All these acts of good, even though they're crazy things. He's running around, with a basin on his head, but he's doing it for this idealized woman, Dulcinea. Now, there is a Dulcinea, but that's not a real name that he's in love with. It's Aldonza, and Aldonza is some dirty farmhand, illiterate woman, in the fields, totally opposite of that, but he sort of has raised her up to be Dulcinea, a woman of great virtue that he owes, his life to, And this is very NF, and I can say personally, I think every woman I've ever been with, I've made into Dulcinea. So, I mean, I get it. I get what's going on in here with that. And there's 100 other episodes. I mean, it's too long to talk about, but there's 100 other episodes that are very sort of NF, But be warned, and this is why I know Cervantes is an NF. It ends with there's points where there's NF beatdowns, okay? Each major section of the book ends with a full-blown NF beatdown, where Don Quixote is beat down for being an NF and having all these NF idealized, imagined things going on with him, and he gets the smackdown, like I talked about in that video with Josh. He definitely gets the smackdown, so be warned. But this is a very NF book, very NF story, absolutely worthy of your time if you're an NF. More than Lincoln and Guba's, Naturalistic Inquiry. That was important to me. But all NFs should own this and Rumi. That's a must-have. Okay, so we're almost done. So I want to talk about some books in general. I have two lists of books to talk about. The first list I've already mentioned on NFGeeks more than once, but I want to mention it again because it makes me laugh, and I think it's useful. And some of you might not have heard it because you might not have seen the videos where I talked about it. And so this is the list of books that are red flags. These are red flags books, which means that you go into someone's house or apartment or dorm, wherever you are, and you see this book. That's a red flag. Okay, you want to not be with this person. Okay, you certainly don't want to date them. All right, so because that's really what this is about dating. If you're about to date somebody, you go over, you see this book, red flag, get out of the relationship. Okay, so there's 3. The first one to look out for is, this one's for women. Okay, although women can own this book, mostly I find that men own this book, and so this is a woman. This is for women. You go into a guy's house, apartment, dorm, and you see this book. Okay, bad. And this book is Catcher in the Rye. Okay, this is a crazy person's book. All right. Now, if you see it on a shelf, you know, you want to ask this question. You want to ask, hey, what did you think of this book? Okay. Now, if they say, oh yeah, I read that in high school, I read that in lit in college, and yeah, it's okay, I don't remember it. Holden Caulfield's kind of a weird kid, but you know, I guess it was an important novel, so I kept it. You know. Okay, they say that. That's the right answer. So good, you can continue the relationship. Okay. Now, if you ask them, what do you think of this book, and they say, oh yeah, my God, Holden Caulfield really speaks to me in The Catcher in the Rye. I get it, you know, and everyone's a phony, and you know, I read this book 7 times, and I'm gonna read it now for the 8th, and like, okay, that's a crazy person who wants to who's gonna assassinate Joe Biden so that he can impress Rachel Maddow. Okay, it's some kind of bizarre schizophrenic plan that is just wrong on all levels. That it could be wrong. So avoid that, ladies. You see that? They say that? Psh, get out of there. All right, gentlemen, your version of this is, if you go over a woman's house, apartment, dorm, or whatever, the red flag book in their shelves is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. Okay, you see that book in there, and they say the same thing. Yeah, it really spoke to me. Okay. That's a mood disordered girl cutter. You know, that's like the overly attached girlfriend meme. Okay, that kind of chick is the one that owns The Bell Jar. All right, so keep that in mind. Okay. Now the last one is Atlas Shrugged. Okay, this one, it doesn't matter, male, female, doesn't matter. Everyone I ever knew who owned Atlas Shrugged and liked it was a selfish jerk. I'm sorry, it's true. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the person, the book, whatever. But that, every time I see that, I go, oh no. And it's always right too, really. That's you know, unless you're into objectivism, then it's, you know, congratulations. But if not, steer clear. That's a red flag. Okay. All right. Now I've already said that list. I've said that list before. But I want to give a new list. Okay. And this one, I'm coming more from my academic side, you know, being an intellectual in the humanities side, to kind of point out. And what I want to point out is that this list is the list of books no one ever reads. Okay, no one reads these books. Okay, and I say that because people will talk as if they've read them, or they will tell you that they read them, and what I want you to realize is that's a lie. Okay, nobody reads these books, and if they're trying to convince you that they have, it's far more likely that they're trying to convince you that they're smart. Okay, and they're name dropping the book, and that it's not real. Okay, that they didn't actually read it. Okay, it's extremely unlikely. All right, so the first book is Moby Dick. Okay, nobody reads Moby Dick. All right, because that book is so boring. All right, it is incredibly boring. I know you think maybe it's not the white whale and all this and Gregory Peck and forget it. That's movies. The reality, it's long and it's boring. Nobody reads Moby Dick. Now, I live in a part of the country where Moby Dick actually takes place on land. So there are people around here, scholars or whatever, who have read Moby Dick and are into it or whatever, you know, because it's part of their bigger thing about literature and in the area and all that, you know, history. Okay, but that's rare. Okay, that's here. All right, you are not here. You are far away from here. Some of you are in other countries. Okay. Nobody reads Moby Dick, all right? Nobody. And nobody completes Moby Dick, let me put it that way. They might start, you know, they may get it, you know, call me Ishmael, but boy, they're not getting to the end, you know. So nobody reads Moby Dick, all right? Establish that. So that's number one. These become more unreadable and less likely they've been read as we go through the list. The next one is Das Kapital by Karl Marx. Nobody reads Das Kapital. Oh my God, it's so complex. Nobody reads that book. Okay, the only person who's read it, somewhere there's an INTJ within 100 miles of you that's annotated the shit out of it and read it. Okay, because INTJs can do that, but that's it. Right, that's it. And if you're the one INTJ who has read Das Kapital, you know there is nobody around you that's read that book. Nobody. You are all by yourself on that one, and you know it. Okay, so no one reads Das Kapital. All right. Next, and I'm going to show this one. Next, no one reads, and I don't care, all right, no one reads, certainly hasn't completed, Being in Time by Martin Heidegger, okay? Nobody reads Heidegger from cover to cover. Nobody. I don't care. I don't want to hear it, all right? Martin Heidegger he's probably the most important philosopher of the 20th century. You know, he sort of the intermediary between existentialism and postmodernism and all sorts of stuff. Talks about existence. This whole thing is about existence. Very fascinating stuff. But nobody reads this book. This book is unreadable. Okay? The only person who ever read this, right, is somewhere there's an INTP who read it from cover to cover just to prove that they don't need college and they're smart and they're not going to be restricted. And, they read it. But really, the INTP. Maybe there's an INTP within 200 miles of you that's read it, okay? You're more likely to run into an INTJ that read Das Kapital than an INTP who read Being in Time. And if you're the INTP who read it, you also know that there is nobody around you who's read, Being in Time. I mean, it's unreadable. I mean, it's awful, Let me see if I can find something, that we can read, okay? So look, I'll just read at random, all right? When space is discovered non-circumspectively by just looking at it, the environmental regions get neutralized to pure dimensions. Places, and indeed the whole circumspectively oriented totality of places belonging to equipment ready to hand, get reduced to a multiplicity of positions for random things. Now, two things about Heidegger is funny. He has these words that are actually 3 or 4 words with dashes. So, like, he has this sort of like ready to hand is like one word with dashes in between the words. And then when he says random things, it's capital T things. And philosophers are serious when they say things are capital T. Whenever they write capital T, that's something important, right? Things, not just things, small t, it's things, big T. That's important. All right, so think of that. That was like, what, 1 sentence, 2 sentences, 400 pages of that. So that's a tough one. Now, but somebody out there, some INTP out there has read it, okay? So here's the big one, all right? And make sure you're clear on this point, okay? Out of anything in this video, remember this one. This is the most important one, all right? Ready? Okay. Nobody, and I mean nobody reads Proust, okay? Nobody. No, nobody has ever read the Remembrance of Things Past. Okay, that book. Nobody has read Marcel Proust. Nobody. I am a doctorate in the humanities. I don't know anybody who's read Proust. I don't know anybody who knows anybody who's read Proust. I don't think Marcel Proust has read Proust. Okay, this thing is unreadable. All right, and the reason why it's unreadable is that it's first of all it's like 4,000 pages. Okay, Remembrance of Things Past is like easily it's like 4,000 pages, maybe more. So this is like 400 pages. So imagine 10 of these. Okay, and that's how long that book is. So imagine 10 of these in a row. That's how long this book is by Proust, in Remembrance of Things Past. And I mean, it's so boring. It's basically about being in France and kind of being gay and remembering things. I mean, more or less, that's what it's about. It's almost unreadable for that reason. I think the length of it, if it was like shorter, I suppose it is. I mean, it's like the Harry Potter series, but not nearly as much fun or entertaining. It's big. And that's why, and this is going to show what a intellectual nerd I am, though, is that in Little Miss Sunshine, which is about the girl going to the beauty pageant, the family's trying to get her there. Steve Carell is he's this gay guy who's all, flipped out because he's no longer the number 1 Proust scholar, and now he's the number 2 Proust scholar, and because his lover had like screwed him over or whatever. But he's all into Proust, and he's all upset about it, and I kept laughing about it because that's the sort of the joke in the movie is that it's important to him, but the whole universe is like, who the hell cares? Who is Proust? Nobody cares, And every time I've seen that, and if I ever watched it with somebody, I think that's hysterical. When he starts talking about Proust, and no one else does. Even the doctor, I watched it with the doctor, and she didn't think it was that funny. And she's educated. It just was outside of her field. But I thought it was hysterical. I do. But why do I think it's hysterical? Because, again, repeat after me, gang, nobody reads Proust. Nobody. Okay? I'm not kidding. Nobody, okay? Nobody reads him. All right, no one has ever. I don't know if anyone has ever read Remembrance of Things Past. I don't know. Okay, I don't think so. So that's it. That's my discussion on books. I hope you enjoyed it, and make your videos and talk about how books relate to you. And again, they don't have to be positive. It can be like, oh God, these things are awful. I'd rather read Wikipedia or whatever. Whatever you think you want to, that's appropriate in terms of your relationship to books. So write whatever you want. Make a video about whatever you want. Okay, so can't wait to see them.